All right, so let's dive into something kind of wild that happened in the San Francisco Bay Area back in December 2024.
Right.
We're talking about the day an earthquake hit.
Yeah.
A tsunami warning went out.
Oh, wow.
And, well, tsunami never actually showed up.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine that?
Oh, my gosh.
Getting that alert on your phone?
Yeah.
Knowing the history of earthquakes in California?
Right.
And then nothing.
Yeah.
But the story of what happened in those hours of uncertainty is what we're going to unpack today.
It really does make you think about how we react to those kinds of warnings.
Right.
You've shared some fascinating source material with me for this deep dive, including firsthand accounts from an article in The Independent.
Yeah.
I'm particularly interested in exploring why this specific earthquake, a magnitude 7.0, triggered a tsunami warning in the first place.
You're right. It's not every day that San Francisco faces a potential tsunami. So let's start with what we know.
Okay.
The earthquake itself was strong enough to shake things up pretty good.
Okay.
But it was the location closer to the San Andreas Fault that really set off alarm bells.
And that location is key because the San Andreas Fault is capable of generating very powerful earthquakes.
Yeah.
Remember the devastating 1906 San Francisco earthquake?
Oh, yeah.
Which essentially leveled the city?
Right.
Was caused by movement along that same fault.
That historical context definitely adds another layer to this story.
I bet.
Yeah, it's like this collective memory of the big one is always lurking in the back of people's minds, especially for someone like Carol Ruth Silver, an 86-year-old retired lawyer who lived through it all when she got the alert and saw that the entire San Francisco peninsula was marked as a danger zone.
Gosh.
She didn't waste any time getting to higher ground.
I can understand her urgency. I bet seeing that danger map brought back a lot of memories and fueled that get out now instinct.
Absolutely. It seems like for her past experience really informed her response.
Right.
Then we have Mary Baker over in Emeryville who, get this, basically ignored the alert because of alert fatigue.
Oh, wow.
Can you believe that?
It's more common than you might think.
Really?
We live in a world of constant notifications.
Yeah.
And it's easy to become desensitized to warnings.
Right.
Even ones as serious as a potential tsunami.
Wow.
Especially when you consider how many alerts we get on our phones these days that turn out to be nothing major.
Yeah.
It's a real challenge for authorities to break through that noise and convey the true urgency of a situation.
It makes you wonder how they can strike that balance between not crying wolf too often, but also making sure people take those warnings seriously when they matter.
Yeah.
Speaking of taking things seriously, Baker's neighbor was on the opposite end of the spectrum.
Okay.
Ready to launch his kayak right from their apartment hallway.
Wow.
I guess he figured it was better to be safe than sorry.
It's an amusing image, isn't it?
Right.
But it highlights the vast spectrum of individual responses to risk.
Yeah.
Some people are meticulous planners and take every precaution, while others adopt a more reactive wait-and-see approach.
Yeah.
And then there are those who, like Baker's neighbor, might improvise a bit.
It's like everyone has their own internal barometer for assessing danger and figuring out how to react.
Yeah.
Then we have Danny Dykroger,
a
cryptocurrency entrepreneur who wasn't fazed at all.
Really?
He was actually excited by the prospect of a tsunami
and
saw it as a chance to live stream Mother Nature doing powerful things.
Dykroger's perspective is interesting because he was high up looking down at the bay.
Yeah.
And that's important to consider because the impact of a tsunami depends a lot on your elevation and proximity to the shoreline.
So for someone like him further inland and at a higher elevation, the threat might have felt less immediate compared to someone right on the beach?
Exactly. The way a tsunami wave behaves changes drastically depending on the depth of the water and the shape of the coastline. In deeper water, tsunami waves are barely noticeable. But as they approach shallower coastal areas, they slow down. Their height increases dramatically.
Wow.
And they can cause immense destruction.
That makes sense. It's a reminder that situational awareness is crucial during an emergency.
Yes.
Your location and understanding of the immediate risks can really shape your response.
For sure.
And speaking of situational awareness, talk about being in the right place at the right time.
Okay.
Janine Zachariah, a journalism professor at Stanford, was actually running a simulated earthquake drill with her students when the real quake hit.
Oh my gosh.
Imagine that.
Wow.
Going from theory to reality in a heartbeat.
What a coincidence.
Yeah.
It almost seems too perfect for a journalism class.
I know, right?
It makes me think about the value of those kinds of drills and simulations.
Right.
They might seem like just exercises.
Yeah.
But by going through the motions, you're essentially creating a mental map of how to respond in a real crisis.
It's like building that muscle memory.
Yeah.
So when the pressure is on, you're not starting from scratch.
Exactly.
Do you think that drill helped Zachariah and her students react more effectively to the real earthquake and the subsequent tsunami warning?
It's hard to say for sure, but I'd imagine it at least gave them a framework for thinking about the situation and a starting point for gathering information and reporting on the events as they unfolded. It certainly makes you wonder how you would react in a similar situation.
Yeah.
Would you know what steps to take if you received a tsunami warning? Where would you go?
Yeah.
Who would you contact?
It's a good question to consider, isn't it?
Yeah.
We often think about the practical preparations for emergencies, like having a go bag or knowing evacuation routes.
Right.
But what about the mental and emotional preparedness?
That's a crucial aspect of preparedness that often gets overlooked.
Right.
And it's not just about knowing what to do, but also about understanding your own emotional responses and developing coping mechanisms for dealing with the stress of a crisis situation.
So while we're diving into the story of the tsunami that wasn't, it's also a chance for all of us to reflect on our own relationship with risk and preparedness. Because even though the big wave never materialized this time, the experience itself revealed a lot about how people perceive and react to potential threats.
Absolutely. And understanding those reactions, both on an individual and a societal level, is essential for building more resilient communities and preparing for the challenges that lie ahead.
Let's move on to the ripple effects of that tsunami warning.
Okay.
It wasn't just individuals reacting.
Yeah.
We saw the San Francisco Zoo starting to evacuate animals.
Oh, wow.
BART, the Bay Area Rapid Transit System, halting trains.
Oh, my gosh.
And even the state's tsunami map website crashing from all the traffic.
Wow.
It's like the entire city went into a kind of holding pattern, waiting to see what would happen.
It really highlights how interconnected our systems are, how even a potential disaster can disrupt everyday life and critical infrastructure.
Right.
The fact that the state's website crashed under the surge in traffic raises questions about our digital preparedness as well.
Right.
In a crisis, access to reliable information is crucial. And if our online systems buckle under pressure, it can exacerbate the chaos and confusion.
It's a reminder that preparedness isn't just about individual actions, but also about the robustness of our infrastructure and the effectiveness of our communication systems during an emergency.
That's right.
And speaking of individual actions, it's amazing to see the range of preparations people made.
Yeah.
Di Kruger mentioned a friend who packed not only a go bag, but also his Bitcoin wallet.
It speaks to the changing nature of what we consider valuable possessions.
Yeah.
For some people, safeguarding their digital assets, like cryptocurrency, is just as important as grabbing their physical documents or family photos.
And I guess in a world where so much of our lives are lived online, it makes sense to consider those digital assets as part of our emergency preparedness plan.
Yes.
On a completely different note.
Okay.
We also hear from Andre C., who decided to just stay on the beach, figuring he'd drown anyway if the tsunami hit.
That's a poignant example of how people cope with a sense of helplessness in the face of overwhelming forces.
Right.
It raises questions about individual agency versus the power of nature and how we grapple with those existential anxieties when confronted with a potential disaster.
It's a stark reminder that even in the midst of a shared experience, like a citywide tsunami warning, individual responses can vary dramatically, shaped by personal beliefs, past experiences, and individual assessments of risk.
And it underscores the complexity of human nature. And how our responses to danger can range from panic and flight to a kind of resigned acceptance and everything in between.
It's clear that the tsunami that wasn't had profound impact on those who experienced it, even though the wave never made landfall.
Yeah.
In the next part of our deep dive, we'll explore some of the lasting lessons from this event and what it reveals about our evolving relationship with risk in a world increasingly prone to natural disasters.
Okay. It's fascinating how this event, even without a dramatic climax, has sparked so many conversations about preparedness, risk perception, and even the ethics of individual choices during a crisis. It's a reminder that sometimes it's the anticipation, the what if, that leaves a more lasting impact than the event itself.
It's like the whole city was holding its breath, wondering if the big one had finally arrived. And even when the all clear was given, there was probably still this lingering sense of unease. Like that could have been it.
Absolutely. And it underscores the psychological toll that living under constant threat can have.
Yeah.
Especially in a place like California, where earthquakes are a part of life.
Right. And then there are those who were caught completely off guard. Remember Carol Ruth Silver, the retired lawyer who evacuated so quickly? Well, she later realized she had forgotten her emergency backpack. I bet a lot of people listening can relate to that feeling of, oh, shoot, I forgot something important.
It's a very human reaction, even in the face of a potential disaster. And it highlights something crucial about preparedness. It's not just about having a plan and supplies, but also about practicing that plan and knowing exactly where everything is so you can grab it quickly when you need it.
It's like in the heat of the moment, even the most prepared among us can make simple mistakes. So regular drills and mental rehearsals are probably just as important as having that physical go bag ready. Speaking of mental rehearsals, I can't stop thinking about Janine Zachariah and her journalism students. I mean, what are the odds that they'd be running a simulated earthquake drill when the real thing happens? Talk about a real-life lesson in reporting under pressure.
It's incredible, isn't it? They went from a theoretical exercise to real-world reporting in an instant. And I imagine that experience for Zachariah's students especially was a powerful reminder that the skills they're learning have very real and sometimes very immediate applications.
Right. It's like they were suddenly thrown into the deep end, having to apply their training in a high-stakes situation. And for everyone else in the Bay Area, that tsunami warning probably triggered a whole range of emotions, fear, anxiety, maybe even some excitement for some. It's a collective experience that I think has stayed with a lot of people.
I agree. The psychological impact of these events can be significant, even if the actual physical threat doesn't materialize. It forces us to confront our own mortality, our vulnerability to forces beyond our control, and that can be a deeply unsettling experience.
It makes you think about how we as humans try to make sense of those kinds of events and how we process those big existential questions about our place in the world. So shifting gears a bit, what are some of the key takeaways you see emerging from this tsunami that wasn't? What can we learn from this experience to better prepare ourselves for future events?
I think one of the most important lessons is the need to take warnings seriously, even if they seem like just another alert. Remember what Captain Justin Shore from the San Francisco Fire Department said, "Don't wait and say, I can make it uphill in 10 minutes. By the time you can see it or hear it, it's too late."
That's a powerful statement and a stark reminder that we often overestimate the amount of time we have to react in an emergency.
Exactly. And that's why having a plan, knowing your evacuation routes, and having that emergency backpack ready to go are absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
But it's not just about the physical preparations.
Right. It's also about building that culture of preparedness, talking to your family and friends about what you would do in a real emergency.
I think those conversations are key. They not only help create a shared understanding of the risks and responsibilities, but also foster a sense of community and support, knowing that you're not facing this alone.
It's like that sense of collective resilience that comes from knowing you're part of a community that's prepared and ready to face whatever challenges come your way. And even though this tsunami warning turned out to be a false alarm, it served as a reminder that nature operates on its own time scale.
Right. We can prepare, we can analyze, we can try to predict and control, but ultimately we have to accept a certain level of uncertainty and learn to navigate it as best we can. The tsunami that wasn't was a test not just of our physical infrastructure, but also of our social fabric.
And how did we do? Did we pass the test?
Well, I think there are definitely some bumps along the way. The crashing websites, the traffic jams, the initial confusion, those are all areas where we can improve. But there were also heartwarming examples of people looking out for each other, sharing information, and offering assistance.
Right, like Baker's neighbor with his kayak. It might seem a bit comical in hindsight, but it also speaks to that spirit of resilience and willingness to help others in a time of need.
Absolutely. And that's something worth celebrating, even amidst the anxiety and uncertainty of a potential disaster. It reminds us that even in the face of fear and the unknown, There's a capacity for humor, compassion, and connection that can help us get through difficult times.
I think that's a really important point, remembering that we're not just individuals facing these challenges, but a community, and that our ability to respond effectively depends on how well we can work together, support each other, and learn from our shared experiences.
I completely agree. And I think this tsunami that wasn't provided some valuable lessons about the importance of communication and collective action in preparing for and responding to potential disasters. It's not just about individual survival, but about the well-being of our communities as a whole.
So as we move toward wrapping up this deep dive, I want to go back to the emotional side of things. We've talked about the practical steps of preparedness, but what about the mental and emotional preparation? What can we do to build resilience and cope with the stress and uncertainty of a potential disaster?
That's a great question. And I think it's an area where we can all benefit from some reflection and self-awareness. One of the most important things is to acknowledge our own vulnerabilities and fears. It's okay to be afraid. It's a natural human response to danger. But by acknowledging those feelings, we can start to develop coping mechanisms for dealing with them.
So instead of trying to suppress or ignore those feelings of fear or anxiety, we should try to understand them and find healthy ways to manage them.
Exactly. And that might look different for different people. Some people find comfort in connecting with loved ones, others find solace in nature or meditation, and still others might turn to their faith or spirituality. The key is to find what works for you and to develop those practices ahead of time so that you have tools at your disposal when you need them most.
It's like building a mental and emotional toolkit for navigating difficult times. And I think that's a really important takeaway from this tsunami that it wasn't just a test of our physical preparedness, but also a test of our emotional resilience and our capacity to adapt and cope with uncertainty.
I couldn't have said it better myself. And while we can't control when or where a natural disaster will strike, we can control how prepared we are, both practically and emotionally.
So as we move into the final part of our deep dive, I want to leave you with this question to ponder. Imagine yourself in that moment, receiving that tsunami warning on your phone. How do you think you would react? What choices would you make? What strengths would you draw on? And what areas might you need to work on? It's like really makes you think about how you would react in that moment.
Absolutely.
You know, it's easy to say, oh yeah, I have a plan.
Right.
But when that alert goes off and you know you're in a potential danger zone, I think instincts take over.
And adrenaline?
Yeah. It's fascinating how this tsunami that wasn't has really gotten us thinking about not just the physical aspects of preparedness, but the mental and emotional ones too.
It's a reminder that preparedness is a holistic endeavor, encompassing practical preparations, community engagement,
and cultivation of inner resilience.
And as we wrap up our deep dive into this event, I think it's worth circling back to Carol Ruth Silver, the retired lawyer who immediately headed for higher ground.
Right.
Even though she forgot her emergency backpack in the rush. She had this powerful takeaway. We have to, at all times, be ready.
Her words really encapsulate the essence of living in a place like California, don't they?
Yes.
A constant balancing act between acknowledging the risks and living a full life without being paralyzed by fear.
It's like finding that sweet spot between complacency and constant anxiety.
Yeah, for sure.
But how do we actually do that? How do we cultivate that at all times be ready mindset without letting it consume our daily lives?
I think it starts with awareness. Understanding the specific risks we face, whether it's earthquakes, wildfires, or even something like a potential tsunami. That awareness then informs our actions.
Prompting us to develop plans, gather supplies, and have those important conversations with our families and communities.
So it's about educating ourselves, staying informed, and making those preparations part of our routine. Not just something we scramble to do when a warning pops up on our phones.
Exactly. And it's also about recognizing that preparedness is an ongoing process, not a one-time checklist. It's about staying vigilant, adapting to changing circumstances, and continually refining our plans as we learn more about the risks we face and how best to mitigate them.
And it's not just about the physical preparations,
No.
It's also about building that mental and emotional resilience.
Absolutely.
I mean, I was talking about earlier.
Because in a crisis, it's not just our physical safety that's at stake, but also our emotional well-being. And that's where those coping mechanisms, those support networks, and that sense of community really come into play.
It's about having the tools and the resources to navigate the fear,
right,
the uncertainty, and the potential trauma that can accompany a disaster. And it's about knowing that we're not alone in facing those challenges,
right,
that we have people we can turn to for support and guidance.
I think that's one of the most hopeful takeaways from this tsunami. It revealed not just the vulnerabilities in our systems and our individual preparedness, but also the incredible strength and resilience of the human spirit.
Yes.
The power of community,
right,
and the deep well of compassion that can emerge in times of crisis.
And as we leave our listeners with this story, I want to echo Carol Ruth Silver's call to action. We have to, at all times, be ready. But I also want to add a layer of nuance to that statement. Being ready doesn't mean living in a state of constant fear or paranoia. It's about finding that balance, that informed awareness that allows us to live our lives fully while also acknowledging the realities of the world we inhabit.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
And it's a reminder that preparedness isn't just about surviving a disaster.
Right.
It's about thriving in the face of uncertainty.
Yeah.
It's about cultivating the knowledge, the skills, and the inner strength to navigate whatever challenges come our way and to emerge from those experiences stronger, wiser, and more connected to the communities that sustain us.
So as you go about your day, remember those words. We have to at all times be ready. But also remember that being ready isn't just about having a go bag and an evacuation plan. It's about cultivating that spirit of resilience, that sense of community, and that unwavering belief in our ability to face whatever the future holds together.
Thank you for guiding us through this deep dive. It's been a fascinating exploration of not just a specific event, but also the larger questions about risk, resilience, and what it means to be truly prepared in a world that's constantly changing.
And thank you, dear listener, for joining us on this journey. I hope you've gleaned some valuable insights, some food for thought, and perhaps even a renewed sense of purpose as you navigate the complexities of our ever-evolving world. Stay curious, stay informed, and stay connected until next time.
All right.
Be well.